G'day legends, I hope that you're well and having a good start to your weekend. Now, yesterday I shared a bit of video that I said was in the wrong location. Now, I just need to clear this up because it was misinformation. Now, this clip is not from Bakhmut, but from Torski on the Kremenar front line. And I always will try and clear up anything like this when I make mistakes. But as I say, it is almost impossible not to make mistakes, at least as a solo creator, because I don't have editors, I don't have checkers. I'm doing the best I can, but I'll always try and clear it up when I am wrong, because I am wrong more often than I bloody should be. So this was the video we looked at of this Ukrainian vehicle coming down this road across a bridge. There's a burning soft skin vehicle here, and as we see just in front of the vehicle, maybe 50 meters, we see an artillery shell explode at some point here. Very, very close, probably within 50 meters. So I actually was a little bit suspicious on this because I was like, I don't remember that bridge on that Ivanovsky road where I said it was. And I do think I said, I don't really know if it was actually there. But that has actually been now geolocated by Chris_769, I believe it is. So he has done this geolocation and called people out for misinformation, and this has been geolocated to this grid reference here. So we put on the ISW, and this makes more sense, crossing this bridge here. So that makes a lot more sense of the location. Now, one of the big things circulating today is seemingly Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of Wagner Group, has called for an end to the war. Now, I've said it before, and whether Putin did it purposely or not, there was a good decision in a sense on calling this invasion, war, whatever you want to call it, but the specifics of a special military operation, the SMO, and not a war. This, I think, gives Russia sort of a way out if it can achieve its loose goals that were set, especially really now that they've met way more resistance than they expected. But what I think is the hard bit is now selling a success to the nation, but the special military operation gives it, well, that was only the operation anyway. Where if I think he declared war, invaded, unless they went right to the border of Poland, Romania, Moldova, then it is a failure in that. So I think it was, I don't want to say clever, but at least whoever came up with it's a special military operation does give them some way out if they can actually sell that to their greater nation. As you know, the losses now are getting impossible to hide as it reaches tens or hundreds of thousands of men. Now, this is going to be the world's largest no shit, and I know, but Prigozhin is not someone to trust. You know, either he's playing a wider game or he really has no idea, as daily he's changing his public wording on this invasion. You know, sometimes he'll say that they're going all the way to Poland and he's going to run for the Ukrainian president. And other days he's saying they're bogged down, they've got no ammunition. Now, I can't comment on day-to-day operations and potentially the psyops that he's running, but I do believe his ultimate end goal is to dethrone Putin. Now, this is just my speculation, but we know there is already growing distaste in Russia for this war and the effects, although we do know the effects felt in major cities such as Moscow is very minimal. But if this invasion ultimately fails, in the end, it's going to be the end of Putin's reign. Now, if Prigozhin can show a victory whilst operating separately and independent of the wider war, being through a PMC, maybe this could set him up for the presidency, but I'm unsure. But I think that's where Prigozhin is really looking. And there has been a lot of sources saying that Putin is somewhat threatened by Prigozhin and the success they've had. This is why they were backing down some of the ammunition, whatever, because he could be seen as an internal threat. Now, today Prigozhin has said the ideal option is to announce the end of the special military operation, to inform everyone that Russia has achieved the results that it planned, and in a sense, we really achieved them. We have ground a huge number of fighters of the armed forces of Ukraine, and we can report to ourselves about the tasks of the SMO are completed. Theoretically, Russia has already received this fat point by destroying a large part of the active male population of Ukraine, by intimidating another part of it, which fled to Europe. Russia cut off the Azov and a large piece of the Black Sea, seized a fat piece of Ukrainian territory, and created a land corridor to Crimea. Now, there is only one thing left to firmly gain a foothold, to claw in those territories that already exist. If Russia can hold the ground it has, although it is a small percentage of Ukraine's wider landmass, it is still a very important region for control of the Black Sea and importantly our land bridge to Crimea. But the point of destroying a large percentage of the male population, as sad as it is is true, along with the intimidation of refugees fleeing into Europe, with as much as 2/3 saying that they don't actually want to return. Now, if you look at Ukraine's already shrinking population due to low replacement rates, this is already a huge issue. Although Russia has very similar issues with the loss of tens or hundreds of thousands of primarily young males, potentially many, many more by the end of the war, and an aging, shrinking population. Now, this conflict won't end for Russia or Ukraine when the guns fall silent. It will be felt for decades. This is why we need to learn that wider wars are unacceptable and how to prevent them, especially land grabs like this. But before we do too much else, let's have a look at the map. So, as always, in the centre we have Ukraine, the capital of Kyiv, red area occupied since 22, and purple since 14, this being Crimea and Donetsk here. The blue area liberated by Ukraine since the invasion in year 22. So, got Romania, Poland, Belarus, Minsk, and Russia around here. So, let's zoom in on no other than Bakhmut. So, the most recent intelligence update from the British MOD talks about Bakhmut as well. Now, Russia has re-energized its assault on the Donetsk oblast town of Bakhmut, as forces of the Russian MOD and Wagner Group have improved cooperation. The Ukrainian defense still holds the western districts of the town, but has been subjected to particularly intense Russian artillery fire over the previous 24 hours. Now, where we see Russian MOD and Wagner Group improve cooperation, we're talking about the VDV being the paratroopers of the Russian forces and Wagner Group. Now, Wagner assault groups continue to conduct the main advance through the centre of the town, while Russian airborne forces, the VDV, have relieved some Wagner units, securing the northern and southern flanks of the operation. Ukrainian forces face significant resupply issues, but have made orderly withdrawals from the positions they have been forced to concede. And that is where we see changes up and down that front line, where we have been looking for the last few days. And we've got some footage and some stuff to go over in this region as well. But let's just have a look at what changes that we have seen. So this was 2 days ago. I think we got the last map. And what we did see was Russia come up to the train line. At one point said they'd pushed over it, which was on the 11th, which is one of the last times I spoke to you, and then have pushed back. And then on 13th, 14th, we saw a push well over the train line. And then today, the 15th, which is 0750, so this map's about 3 or 4 hours new, that the northern part has pushed back to the east, back to the train line, but the centre has pushed west of the train line. But we've also seen some movements on the flanks as well, as we have seen movement to the north of Bakhmut over the past couple of days. We have just seen a northern push out here. So let's have a look and compare some maps as well to this. So it's where we're looking. So only the centre of the train line has actually pushed to the west. The centre of the train line we know is, well, this train line itself we know is a strong point for Bakhmut. So let's have a look on the ISW and see what they're saying. So this is the train line running down through here. So they're saying in the north, the claimed Russian control has pushed to the west of the train line, but in the centre it's up to the train line, and the south only to the east of the train line, which is similar along here. Although it is showing the claimed Russian control is much further in on the north than on the deep state. So if we look at this reservoir, they're saying that they are to the south of that reservoir. So let's look on the ISW from yesterday, and you can see my head pop up here too, and see what is different. If we can line these up a little bit better. So the south is looking fairly similar, and along with the front line here at the train line is very similar as well. Although it is showing that Russia has pushed more in on the north in here. This being the new map, this is the old map. So on the north, have pushed to the south further, as well as in the centre part in the north here as well. So let's have a look at the Rybar map. We've got one of them as well. So let's look at the Rybar and compare this to the deep state. And I'm sorry this is so blurry. This is the best quality Rybar I could get, but it is showing very similar to what the ISW showed, as of this reservoir, that they are in line to the south, if anything, of the reservoir, and pushing down the train line here. So we look at that compared to the ISW. It's showing very similar in the north, very similar in the south, and similar along the train line, really amongst all three maps. And as I say, the reason I do this is I believe this is very important to do, is to compare these maps, because each map has its own information where they get it from, and in some cases its own narrative and own agenda. Now, speaking of Bakhmut, the spokesman of the Eastern Troop has said that the Russians are talking about cutting off roads and encircling Bakhmut, but has claimed that this is false information. He said this is hanging off the flag by Prigozhin. Then the false statements about taking 80% of the city. Now they are announcing the encirclement and control of the roads. The truth is that there are fierce street battles. When we see that we have ready reserves and equipment, we will make a decision to strike. Now, this has been, the 80% thing has been really denied by Ukraine absolutely throughout, but I think the maps do show a different picture. So if we look at the deep states, the Rybar's probably a better thing of this, is the lighter red is the city limits, the dark red is outside the city, and this is the area controlled by Ukraine. Now we know that this is Rybar, so it may be a bit more controlled by Ukraine, but either way, it is showing very similar to what they're claiming of that sort of 80-20. Now also in Bakhmut, we saw an impressive, massive explosion. So this one here, a massive, unbelievable explosion, and the explosion pretty much goes straight up, unlike artillery and explosions will have, because they're coming on some level of trajectory. Now, both sides are claiming different causes. Russia is claiming that its artillery hit an ammo dump, which could absolutely be true, while Ukraine is claiming it was a controlled detonation of a building to slow Russia's advance, which could also be true, as we've seen Ukraine doing this. Now, people have called out Ukraine for, basically just demolishing these buildings, but you realize these buildings have been getting hit by artillery from Russia for the best part of now 12 months. Like, these buildings, they're going to have to be pulled down anyway after this war and rebuilt anyway. But this was geolocated through the same guy, Chris759, who is unbelievably good at this, to this location here. And I've actually chucked that on a map on the ISW, and this location is here. So it is in the claimed Russian control, and this video is believed to be over the past 24 hours. So again, this is why this area is claimed, or Russian presence, but there can absolutely be street fighting all through this region. Now, there's also been the first NATO FV-103, this British Spartan vehicle, to actually be killed in this war, and has been killed in Bakhmut. So I actually had to have a double check on this footage, because I was like, what the hell are they on about? So this is the video here. Now, what we see is this guy look up over this wall, and there's this vehicle here, which I counted the road wheels, and I said, well, that is not a Spartan. And then that shows this vehicle here, which you can't really see too well. Now, this first vehicle is an MTLB, which is a Soviet-era armoured personnel carrier. This vehicle here, if you look at the back and look at these 45-degree slopes on the top, which is pretty iconic of the Spartan, and this is the rear of a Spartan here. So as well, you can only ever, show things so well. If I can bring up the video again. Let's see if we can see it right. I'm not very good at this. So, yeah, I think that this is probably confirmed that in Bakhmut there was lost the first British Spartan vehicle. Now, this vehicle was said to actually be bought by privately raised funds in Ukraine. So let's have a look up and down the map in some different areas as well. So we have a look in the north, and let's see if there's been any major shifts. In Bilohorivka, if we go back 2 days, we see that Russia on the 14th did push well up this road, and then Ukraine did push them back on the center of this road. Now, to the north, we didn't see much else change. Let's go down into Avdiivka and see if we saw any major changes. So we'll go back to the 13th, and only just in the north on this main route here, we did see Russia push up a little bit, but no massive gain there. So let's have a look at Avdiivka compared to the ISW, and we'll compare that to the Rybar as well, as I know I miss this region sometimes. So if we look on this road here that loops right into this major big intersection here, that Ukraine has pushed on the side of this and has taken back some ground, although not ground held since 14 being denoted by the purple. But on the ISW, there is only claimed presence through here, which is indicated by the grey zone here, although the grey zone on the ISW is pushing more into this region. But if we look to the north in Krasnoarhivka, near Stepove, it is showing very different. So at least on the ISW, there's claimed Russian presence in Stepove, which there's no grey zone shown on the ISW. Otherwise, fairly similar, except for this Vodani, this bulge on the ISW is larger than it is on the deep state. So if we take this reservoir here, is this reservoir here, they're saying it's basically straight up and across. That would be up and across here. Again, this is why we look at multiple different maps. And what we'll do as well, it's going to be blurry, is we will have a look on the Rybar version as well. So the Rybar version, if we look at this reservoir here, is showing almost identical to the to the ISW. So where it pushes up from this reservoir across, up from the reservoir across. If anything, a little bit less actually on the Rybar. But as far as control, up past this intersection of this road is showing fairly similar across the maps, and as well from Krasnodarivka to Stopove, they're saying on this only just up to Stopove. So is very similar. And we didn't see any change in Mariinka, but what we did see in Vuhledar. Now we know the Vuhledar has been a point of a massive grinder for Russia. Russia really need this area of Vuhledar as it connects major roads through Mariinka, and that's where we saw major pushes on Mariinka too, but have not been able to really get any traction or any foothold in this region. We did see that they had another one of these bulges up in this direction here, maybe a week back, in these tree lines, trying to get some foothold. But what we've seen over the past 48 hours is Russia push up one of these tree lines as well, maybe trying to flank Vuhledar. We know that region is heavily defended by Ukraine, and Russia has absolutely had huge losses there, if not the largest single losses of assaults since World War II. So this is what the ISW is showing, is only claimed presence up this road, which is this road here in the grey zone, but is not showing the same sort of push out on the eastern side. But we know that area is very important for both sides as supply, but Russia have not had really any success in this region. Later this month, there are UN Security Council meetings in the United States, and the US has made a decision to not yet issue visas to the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, and the Russian delegation. This has widely been celebrated by Ukrainian supporters and is being used as fire for the Russian narrative. Now, Lavrov has said, "We call on Washington not to delay issuing visas to our delegation, including our journalists. The denial of visas violates the US obligation as the host country of the UN headquarters, impeding the proper full functioning of the World Organization." Now, I do think no matter who you support, that shutting down any discussion, even with members that you hate, is not a good idea. I think it can start a dangerous turn down a slippery slope, especially the precedents it could set for countries like China and India. Now, this is in turn denying a UN member the ability to visit the UN building to attend a UN meeting, which is the exact thing the US ensured they would never do, hence why the building was actually built in the US in the first place. The whole point of the UN is for global stabilization and not to be exclusive or biased. Now, I completely understand the premise of this, but I think that there has to be an idea of giving Russia something to lose, not backing them into a corner where we can see further neglect for human rights and further escalation of the conflict. As we know, conflicts like this have to end diplomatically at some point. But legends, that's all I've got for you today. I know it's been a longer one. I apologise. Look after yourselves. Have a great weekend. If you'd like to support me, there's links down below. I really do appreciate it, but never, ever feel obliged. So look after yourselves, and I will speak to you tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.